Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please, I crave your indulgence to stand on the existing protocol. So I'm going to take a few minutes of your time to go through the communique that we've put together, curating it from the expressions that have been genuinely brought to the fore in this conversation. It is the first Inter-Party Advisory Council Roundtable, and the role of the judiciary in Nigeria's democratic sustainability is the theme. The Inter-Party Advisory Council, as we all know, is the umbrella body of all registered and recognized political parties in Nigeria and a critical stakeholder in the national democratic process. The body is set up in recognition of the role of political parties in consolidating and deepening democracy, as well as ensuring a conducive environment for successful elections, political stability, enduring democracy, good governance, and well-being of Nigerians. Ipac is structured at the national, at the states, and at the local government areas in order to ensure that all levels and tiers of government are carried along in the electoral and democratic process. Now, concerned by the recent developments in the polity with regards to the role of the judiciary in the democratic process, and with the clear understanding of the critical role of Ipac as the incubator of leadership within the executive and the legislative arms across the three tiers of government, and to a large extent, the judiciary as it relates to the appointment of judges at all levels, the Council thought it was necessary to convene a roundtable discussion among relevant stakeholders to explore the judiciary's role in consolidating democracy in Nigeria, identify challenges, and propose solutions to enhance the judiciary's effectiveness. Now, key issues of great concern to Ipac and stakeholders include constitutional interpretation and judicial review, dangers of conflicting court judgments, making sense of the political logjam and the traditional debacle in Rivers and Kano states respectively, judicial independence and accountability, the National Judicial Council, and the effectiveness of current disciplinary measures in curbing misconduct, etc. Now, the roundtable session noted the following. Democracy is a cornerstone of modern governance. It is characterized by free and fair elections that allow citizens to express their will and choose their leaders. In a democracy, majority decision is legitimate only when it is a majority decision within a community of equals. That means not only that everyone must be allowed to participate in politics as an equal through the vote and through freedom of speech and protest, but that political decisions must treat everyone with equal concern and respect, that each individual person must be guaranteed fundamental civil and political rights. No combination of other citizens can take that away, no matter how numerous they are or how much they despise his or her race or morals or way of life. The brand of democracy most of our political actors love and practice is government of the selected, by the selected, for the selected. Democracy in the true sense of government of the people, by the people, for the people is very far from Nigeria. Political leaders and money bags have played very dangerous and undermining roles in our democratic journey so far. Our democracy has been militarized and thuggish prone. We allowed what the law prohibited as instrument of installing leadership in power. Today, people have become impoverished and poverty has become the lots of our people. Many Nigerian politicians used all manners of manipulative antics and tactics to impose themselves in power, knowing fully well that there will be no remedy and consequences at the end of the day. In all of this, the judiciary, which is the institution that has the duty to hold politicians accountable, appears to have been unable to do so efficiently for reasons not far from the Nigerian factors. It is sad and it is terrible that the brand of democracy in Nigeria is by getting power through the barrel of the guns and thuggery and punish people by looting and bragging as knights in shining armor rather than the villains in actions and decisions. That is now the Nigerian brand of our democracy. Nothing is done decently. And that means that the future is bleak for our democracy and electoral jurisprudence in Nigeria. Nigerian democracy may head to a calamitous end unless the judiciary and legal profession retrace their steps in the kind of judgments being delivered in electoral matters by the Nigerian judiciary. The role of the judiciary, particularly through election tribunal, is indispensable for upholding and sustaining democratic principles in Nigeria. The judiciary ensures the fair resolution of electoral disputes, upholds the rule of law, promotes accountability, safeguards democratic values, boosts public confidence in democracy, and sets legal precedents for the future. The commitment of the judiciary to these responsibilities is very crucial in securing a robust and thriving democracy in Nigeria, where the voice of the people is respected and the democratic process is transparent and just. In Nigeria, as in many other democratic nations, Nigerians and our laws expect the Nigerian judiciary to play crucial roles in preserving and protecting democratic governance and the integrity of democracy through election tribunals and courts by adjudicating electoral disputes. Now, all over the world, historical jurisprudence has shown that members of the legal profession, who are the producers of the judiciaries in their respective countries, play significant roles through the judicial institutions for good governance and accountability. The court, and indeed all courts in Nigeria, have a duty which flows from a power granted by the Constitution of Nigeria to ensure that citizens of Nigeria, whether high or whether low, get the justice which the case deserves. The powers of the courts are derived from the Constitution, not at the sufferance or generosity of any other arm of government of Nigeria. The judiciary, like all citizens of this country, cannot be a passive onlooker. When any person attempts to subvert the administration of justice, and will not hesitate to use the powers available to it to do justice in the case before it. In those days when judges of immaculate character and courage manned the judiciary in Nigeria, there was this consistency in judicial precedents. High courts were bound by their previous decisions. The Court of Appeal was bound by its previous decisions unless there were reasons to depart from it. In departing, their lordships will give convincing reasons. The Supreme Court was the alpha and the omega of the judiciary, and it gave sound decisions rooted in good and logical jurisprudence of that which produced justice in judgments. Its decision binds all the courts below it and is bound by its own decisions unless overruled or departed from. It was not consistently inconsistent in decisions. Lawyers were sure that with certainty of precedents of previous decisions, they could give legal advice and be sure that their advice would be correct and almost accurate. As at now, in all honesty, with profound respect, we can say that our revered Supreme Court is not consistently inconsistent in decisions, particularly when it comes to decisions in electoral jurisprudence. There are so many inconsistent decisions and precedents in electoral matters and in jurisprudence in Nigeria coming from the Apex Court. Now, gradually, there is no hope of getting justice in electoral jurisprudence by those who are robbed of victories at the polls, either by Turkish approaches or by outright INEC collusion with those they are ordered to be declared in breach of the sovereignty of the people. Many decisions are at variance with legal logic and constitution and previous decisions of the courts. Judgments of courts and tribunals ought to contain and serve the end of justice, the interest of those who were wrongly denied opportunities at the polls and those who voted them. But alas, that is not the case in most cases of judgments in electoral matters. The kind of electoral judgments from our courts, which in most cases are devoid of justice, has made many of them to lose hope in the potential good and purpose of justice and democracy in the Nigerian state. And I end by saying, it is, however, incontrovertible and worthy to note that the judiciary faces a myriad of challenges like inadequate funding, complete autonomy and independence of the judiciary, dependence on other arms of government. Recommendations. Number 1, Nigerian courts need to take a hard look at some of the principles of electoral jurisprudence that are aiding and abating the rigging and imposition of people duly rejected at the polls, but wrongly announced and imposed by the electoral body. Number 2, Nigerian judiciary must be bold and ready to do what is set up to do in deepening democracy given the controversies that trail the conduct of elections in Nigeria. Number 3, the old others and some archaic precedents and principles that put roadblocks to democratic growth and development must be departed from. A new set of rules to guide the political behaviors of our political class must be set. The courts must emphasize the superiority of constitutional provisions and acts of parliament over rules, guidelines, regulations. Number 4, the inevitable and sacred duty on the judiciary to avoid technicality and to do substantial justice, since in the words of the Supreme Court, technical justice in reality is not justice, but a caricature of it. Number 5, the innovations introduced by the BVAS accreditation and uploading of election results at the polling units to ensure transparent democratic process must be given the correct interpretation to ensure the sanctity of our democratic sanity. Number 6, electronic evidence is Section 84 of the Evidence Act, and the use of technology must be given prominent pride of place to avoid old and analog requirements of calling polling units by polling unit evidence in proof of electoral malpractices. Number 7, legislation should nip in the bud the issue of laxity and latitude given to INEC to choose whichever method of transmission of results it wants, but adhere to a mandatory, uniform, clear, and unarguably duty and obligation prone to be carried out by INEC via clean and unambiguous status. Number 8, the Nigerian judiciary must maintain a very great distance from politics and politicians. Number 9, the judiciary must be ready to order the demolition of superstructure erected on faulty foundations to produce winners in elections in Nigeria and to instill political sanity in our political system and to ensure democratic growth and sustainability. Number 10, no court, what is sought, should approve the barbaric conduct that produce winners of elections in democracy on the principle of substantial compliance that will continue to encourage brigandage and hooliganism as part of the Nigerian brand of democracy. And number 11, our courts must resist the temptations of encouraging the continued use of thuggery as parts of Nigerian democratic culture and values. Nigerians must not be seen as primitive in the comity of democratic nations. And number 12, there is a critical need to fully introduce forensics, automation, and deployment of technology to the electoral process from registration to electoral transmission. Number 13, to enhance resolutions of disputes in political parties, there should be a legislation to entrench fixed arbitration panels in political parties to deal with internal disputes in political parties. Number 14, Nigerian judiciary must move from the analog jurisprudence to digital jurisprudence, where the use of technological devices to resolve electoral disputes are welcome and deeply encouraged. No one needs to be physically present in Zamfara, Lagos, Enugu, Edo, and Rivers, for instance, to see what goes on in those states and other states on election days, given the ability of our technological devices that has made the world a global village. And number 15, politicians should not be involved in the recruitment process of judges. Accordingly, recruitment of judicial officers must be carried out transparently, meritoriously, and without bias, so as to have the best hands with impeccable integrity, which will in turn rub off on the quality of judgments. And number 16, the recruitment of delegates who elect the candidates who ultimately fly the flag of the parties should be critically recalibrated. And number 17, politicians, judicial officers, and key stakeholders should be patriotic and seek to leave lasting legacies for the sustenance and deepening of democracy. Number 18, because self-correction is not very easy, judicial reforms may be more effective if it comes from outside the system. Hence, NBA needs to work with other organizations like stakeholders within the civil society organization to facilitate the expected judicial reforms. And number 19, the need to purge INEC of staffs who are partisan. Number 20, in order to avoid the vicious circle of blames, we need institutional reforms where the institutions are stronger than the individuals. And finally, number 21, participants commended Ipac leadership for this initiative towards deepening democracy and enjoined stakeholders, government partners, and the media to support Ipac Roundtable series. And we so pledge you and urge you to also support this series, as this is the first roundtable and more to come in future. This is a submission of the communique. Thank you very much.